He was worth over $50 billion. But tonight, he looked like he was worth less than zero. Disguised as a frail homeless man, billionaire Marcus Chen entered the most exclusive restaurant in New York, a place he secretly owned. He was ignored, sneered at, and openly mocked by staff and patrons alike. He was about to give up on humanity entirely, ready to let his fortune rot. But then, one young waitress saw something no one else did. She performed one simple, quiet act that changed both of their lives and the fate of an empire forever. Marcus Chen was not a happy man. He was by any objective measure one of the most successful men on earth. As the CEO and sole chairman of Dynasty Holdings, his name was a whisper in the halls of power, a signature that could move markets or crumble nations. His wealth, estimated at a staggering $50 billion, was a fortress of solitude. From his penthouse office overlooking Central Park, he managed shipping lanes, tech conglomerates, and real estate empires. He was in every sense a king. But the king was profoundly, achingly alone. Today, that solitude felt less like a fortress and more like a tomb. At 10 a.m., he had chaired a board meeting where he single-handedly dismantled a hostile takeover bid. His voice calm and measured, sliced through the arguments of men 2 decades his junior. At 1 p.m., he had eaten a $400 lunch alone at his desk, tasting none of it. And at 3 p.m., he had visited his private physician, Dr. Alistair Finch. The news was not good. "It's the stress, Marcus," Dr. Finch said, his voice laced with practiced empathy. "Your heart is well. It's working too hard. The arrhythmia is worsening. We need to talk seriously about reducing your workload, or you won't live to see your next birthday." Marcus had simply nodded. A next birthday. What a hollow concept. He had no wife, no children, no family left to celebrate with. His heritage was a closely guarded secret. His father was a brutal, self-made New York industrialist. His mother, however, was the daughter of a proud but impoverished kintsugi artist from Kyoto. She had died when Marcus was young, leaving him only a small, worn token. His family mon or crest, a stylized kiri bloom, and a memory of quiet dignity. His father, ashamed of the connection, had beaten any trace of that heritage out of him. Marcus learned to hide it, to be more ruthless, more Western, more stone than anyone else. He had succeeded. But in doing so, he had erased the only part of himself he ever valued. Now facing his own mortality, he saw the grotesque emptiness of his life. His empire was a monument to a man no one knew. He needed to find someone, anyone worthy of the legacy. Not the money, but the values his mother had embodied: honor, respect, and kindness. That evening he conceived a test. He went into the private wardrobe in his penthouse, past the rows of handmade Italian suits. He retrieved an old box. Inside were the clothes of his old college groundskeeper, a man he had admired long since passed. They were clean but worn. A faded flannel shirt, patched woolen trousers, a threadbare overcoat, and a pair of scuffed boots. He added a knit cap and a pair of thick, smudged glasses. He looked in the mirror. The transformation was shocking. The commanding presence of Marcus Chen was gone. In his place stood a stooped elderly man, perhaps in his late 70s, with the weary, invisible look of someone the world had forgotten. He looked tired. He looked poor. He looked hungry. He bypassed his private elevator, taking the service lift to the street. He walked 15 blocks in the cold October air. Horns blared. People pushed past him pointedly, looking away. A bubble of disdain forming around him. He felt the sting of it, the cold irrelevance. He arrived at the Golden Crown, the crown jewel of Manhattan's culinary scene. It was a restaurant that required reservations 6 months in advance. It was also through a complex series of shell corporations owned entirely by Dynasty Holdings. Marcus Chen owned every chair, every silver fork, every overpriced bottle of wine in its cellar. He pushed open the heavy brass door. The warmth and low hum of conversation washed over him, followed immediately by a wall of ice. The head waiter, a tall, severe man named Vincent, looked up from his ledger. His eyes scanned Marcus from head to toe. The polite, practiced smile vanished, replaced by a sneer of pure disdain. "Can I help you?" Vincent asked. The words were a weapon. "A table for one?" Marcus said, his voice intentionally raspy. Vincent actually laughed a short, sharp bark. "Sir, I believe you are mistaken. This is the Golden Crown. Perhaps you're looking for the soup kitchen on 52nd Street. Several patrons waiting for their tables turned to stare. A woman in a fur coat physically recoiled. "I am not mistaken," Marcus said, keeping his eyes level. "I would like a table." "We are fully booked for the next 3 months," Vincent said, turning back to his ledger in a clear act of dismissal. "I see several empty tables," Marcus pointed. Vincent's face flushed with anger. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a threatening hiss. "Look, old man, I don't know what game you're playing, but you are upsetting the clientele. Leave now or I will call security and have you removed for trespassing." "I am a customer." "I wish to eat," Marcus insisted, gripping the worn wooden cane he had brought. He was testing the limits. "Security," Vincent snapped his fingers. "Vincent, what is the meaning of this?" A new voice, sharp and stressed, came from the dining room. It was the general manager, flustered. "This vagrant is refusing to leave, sir," Vincent said. The manager looked at Marcus, then at the gawking patrons. He calculated the scene versus the problem. "Fine," the manager hissed, making a split-second decision. "Put him in the back by the kitchen. Get him in and out quickly before he bothers anyone else." Vincent was furious at being overruled, but obeyed. "This way," he sneered, not even looking at Marcus. He grabbed Marcus by the elbow, his fingers digging in painfully, and marched him through the sea of pristine white tablecloths. Whispers followed them. "Disgusting. How did they let that in?" "It's ruining my appetite." Vincent shoved Marcus into the worst table in the house, a tiny two-top crammed into an alcove, where the main passage to the kitchen swung open every 30 seconds, bathing him in noise and harsh light. The table was unset and sticky. "Here," Vincent said, dropping a menu onto the table. "Don't bother the staff. They are very busy serving actual guests." He stormed off. Marcus sat there, the invisible king in his own castle, surrounded by subjects who despised him. He watched as waiters hurried past their eyes, trained to avoid his table as if eye contact were a disease. For 20 minutes he sat, no water, no greeting, no acknowledgement. He was just an old man in a shabby coat. He was no one. The coldness in the room was far worse than the cold on the street. He felt a deep, profound despair. His test was a failure. Humanity was just as shallow as he feared. He was ready to leave to go back to his empty penthouse, sign his entire fortune over to a sterile foundation, and wait to die. And then she approached. Jasmine Williams hated the end of the month. The tips from the Golden Crown were exceptional, but her share always seemed to vanish just as it arrived. Her mother's experimental MS treatment wasn't fully covered by insurance, and her own tuition for her master's program in art history at Columbia was a dragon that always needed feeding. Tonight, she was working a double her feet, aching in the restaurant-issued shoes, her mind preoccupied with a thesis paper on Meiji-era iconography. She was what the other waiters called a floater, assigned to help the senior staff, rather than having her own more lucrative section. This meant she did a lot of the grunt work, filling water glasses, running plates, and clearing tables for men like Vincent, who treated her with the same disdain he reserved for anyone not wearing a $10,000 watch. She was in the kitchen organizing bread baskets when she heard Vincent complaining loudly to the manager. "Absolute disgrace. Table 19, he's probably going to try and steal the silverware. I don't want my staff going near him." "Just ignore him," the manager replied, signing an invoice. "He'll get the message and leave." Jasmine peeked through the diamond-shaped window in the swinging door. She saw the man. He was old, frail, and sitting utterly alone at the worst table in the house, the one everyone called Siberia. He was staring at the unset table, his hands folded in his lap. He wasn't bothering anyone. He just looked lost. A pang of simple, uncomplicated empathy hit her. He reminded her of her grandfather in his last years. The way the world just started to look through him. "Jasmine," Vincent barked, spotting her. "Table 7 needs more wine. Mr. Harrison, go." "Right away," Jasmine said. She grabbed the silver ice bucket for Harrison's table, a notoriously demanding hedge fund manager who always tipped well but made the staff feel like insects. She navigated the floor, smiling politely at the diners. She passed Mr. Harrison, who was loudly recounting a recent yacht purchase. "Your wine in just a moment, sir," she said with a practiced smile. Her path took her right past table 19. The old man didn't look up. He just sat there, a picture of quiet dejection. The other waiters were giving his table a comically wide berth, as if he were radioactive. Jasmine stopped. She could hear Vincent's voice in her head. "Don't waste time. He's a zero. Focus on the money." She looked at Mr. Harrison, then back at the old man. Harrison had everything. This man, it seemed, had nothing, not even a glass of water. She made a choice. Setting the heavy wine bucket down on a nearby service stand, she walked over to table 19. The man didn't flinch. She stood quietly for a moment, waiting for him to notice her. He didn't. "Good evening, sir," she said softly. The man looked up startled. His eyes behind the thick, smudged lenses were surprisingly sharp. They were piercing, analyzing her. He seemed less frail up close, just weary. "They're not letting you serve me," he rasped, his voice dry. "I'm serving you," she said simply. She pulled a clean linen napkin from her apron and with a practiced flick, spread it over the sticky table surface. She then retrieved a water glass and a small silver pitcher from the service stand. She poured him a glass of water. "May I get you something to drink?" she asked. "Some hot tea, perhaps." "It's very cold out tonight." The old man stared at her, his expression unreadable. He seemed to be looking for an angle, a motive. "Why?" he asked. "Why?" "What, sir?" "Why are you helping me?" "They told you not to." "Everyone deserves a glass of water," Jasmine said with a small, tired smile. "And it's my job to serve guests, all of them." The man grunted. "Tea? Just hot tea? Green tea if you have it." "We certainly do. I'll be right back," she said. When she turned, she saw Vincent standing by the head waiter podium, his face like a thundercloud. He made a sharp-cut-it motion across his throat. Jasmine pretended not to see him. She went to the tea station. The other waiters were whispering. "What is she doing?" one of them muttered. "She's kissing her tips goodbye." "Vincent is going to fire her." Jasmine ignored them. She prepared the tea service. She didn't just grab a bag and a pot of hot water. She selected the premium sencha from the loose-leaf canister, measured it carefully into a proper ceramic pot, and poured the water just before it reached a full boil, the way she knew it was supposed to be done. It was a detail she'd learned from her thesis research. She placed the pot, a small cup, and a sliver of lemon on a clean tray, and walked back out. She could feel Vincent's eyes burning into her back from across the room. She could feel Mr. Harrison glaring at her, tapping his empty wine glass on the table. She ignored them both. She returned to table 19. The old man was waiting. He looked different, more alert. The mask of frail confusion had slipped just a fraction. He was watching her, studying her. "Your tea, sir," she said. She placed the service on the table, and that's when it happened. As Jasmine set down the heavy ceramic teapot, the old man Marcus did something absent-minded. He had been turning a small object over and over in his coat pocket, a habit from his childhood. His fingers were stiff from the cold, and as he moved his hand, the object slipped from his grasp and landed on the table with a soft clink. It was a small, dark metal disc, no bigger than a quarter. It was worn smooth with time, the details nearly erased. To anyone else, it would have been a worthless trinket, a piece of pocket lint. Marcus reached to snatch it back, a flash of panic in his eyes, but Jasmine had already seen it. She paused, her hand hovering over the teapot. She leaned in slightly. The object wasn't just a trinket. It was a crest, a stylized flower with 3 leaves and 3 stems. Jasmine's breath caught in her throat. She knew that symbol. She had spent the last 8 months staring at it in textbooks. It was the Kirimon, the Polonia crest. It was one of the most significant family emblems in Japanese history, used by warrior clans and later by the government itself. She had just finished a paper on its specific use in Meiji-era lacquer. To see it here in the hands of this man. It was an impossibly jarring intersection of her 2 worlds. Marcus saw her looking, his eyes narrowed. "It's nothing," he said gruffly, covering it with his hand. "A lucky charm." Jasmine looked at his face. She saw the high cheekbones, the shape of his eyes behind the thick glasses, the profound hidden dignity in his posture. It all clicked. He wasn't just a poor old man. He was a man with a past, and that past was being disrespected. Jasmine stood up straight. The restaurant was loud. A burst of laughter came from a large table. The kitchen door swung open with a whoosh and a clatter of pans. Mr. Saul Harrison was now complaining audibly to a passing busboy about the atrocious service. In the center of this chaos, Jasmine created a small, quiet bubble of absolute calm. She did not say, "I know what that is." She did not say, "Are you Japanese?" She did not use a single word of a language she didn't speak. Instead, she did what her art history professor, a man who had spent 30 years in Kyoto monasteries, had taught her was the proper way to show respect for a piece of history. She took one small step back from the table. She placed her hands flat against her sides, and she executed a short, precise bow. Bending from the waist, her back straight, her eyes lowered for just a moment. It was not a subservient gesture. It was a bow of profound academic and human respect. She straightened up. She looked him directly in the eyes. Her own eyes were clear, communicating a message he had not received in 60 years. Then she spoke, her voice clear and soft, cutting through the noise just for him. "It is an honor to serve you, sir." Marcus's stone went absolutely rigid. His blood felt like it had turned to ice than to fire. No one had bowed to him like that in his life. Not truly. His corporate subordinates bowed out of fear. This was different. This was recognition. She hadn't just seen an old man. She hadn't even just seen a Japanese man. She had seen his heritage, the very soul of him that he kept locked away, and she had honored it. In the middle of this temple of Western greed, a young woman had with one simple gesture acknowledged his mother. His hand, the one covering the mon, was trembling. "Why?" He started, his voice thick. "Why did you do that?" Jasmine smiled, a genuine warm smile. "My apologies if I overstepped, sir. I'm writing my thesis on Meiji-era art. Your lucky charm is very beautiful. It represents a history that deserves respect." She poured his tea. She did not splash it. She poured it with care, the pale green liquid steaming in the cup. She placed it in front of him. "Please let me know if there is anything else I can get for you," she said. "Wait," Marcus said, his voice stronger now. "Your name?" "It's Jasmine, sir." "Jasmine Williams." "Jasmine Williams," he repeated, as if committing it to memory. "What is it you are studying exactly?" "Art restoration and history with a focus on trans-Pacific cultural exchange." "A fascinating field," Marcus murmured. He was testing her again, but in a new way. He was no longer testing her patience. He was testing her depth. "And why that?" "Because," Jasmine said, glancing around the opulent, gaudy room, "I think we forget things. We paper over the old things, the important things with gold. I like finding what's underneath. The kintsugi philosophy that things are more beautiful for having been broken. I think that applies to people too. Marcus stared at her, utterly flawed. Kintsugi, the art his mother had practiced, the art of mending broken pottery with gold, making the break the most beautiful part of the piece. He had spent his entire life being ashamed of his broken heritage, the part of him that wasn't American, that wasn't stone. This girl, this complete stranger, had just handed him the metaphor for his entire existence. Before he could reply, a shadow fell over the table. The shadow belonged to Vincent, the head waiter, and his face was a mask of controlled fury. He had seen her bow. He had seen her talking for 5 full minutes to the non-paying vagrant, while Mr. Harrison, a man who regularly tipped 100% on $1,000 bottles of wine, was left waiting. "Miss Williams?" Vincent said, his voice dangerously quiet. "A word now." Jasmine's face felt the brief, happy light of their conversation extinguished. "Excuse me, sir," she murmured to Marcus. Vincent grabbed her by the upper arm, his grip just as painful as it had been on Marcus, and pulled her a few feet away into the alcove, but out of Marcus's direct hearing. "What in God's name do you think you are doing?" Vincent hissed, his face inches from hers. "I was taking his order, sir. He asked for tea," Jasmine said, trying to keep her voice steady. "He is not a guest. He is a problem. And you," Vincent spat, "are my problem. You have just ignored Mr. Harrison, our most important client, to serve that. Are you insane or just stupid?" "Mr. Harrison was being attended to. He has an empty wine glass that is an emergency. This," he jabbed a thumb toward Marcus, "is trash that needs to be taken out. Get back to your section. Do not speak to that man again. Do not even look at him. Am I clear?" Jasmine felt a hot flush of shame and anger. "He's just an old man, Vincent. He is nothing," Vincent said, enunciating every word. "And if you can't tell the difference between a high-value client and a piece of street garbage, you have no future in this business. Go now." Jasmine flinched, nodding silently. She turned to walk away, her eyes stinging. "Miss Williams," it was Marcus's voice. It was no longer raspy. It was clear, calm, and carried an authority that made Vincent, who hadn't even realized the old man, could hear him, spin around. Marcus was looking at Vincent. "You are mistaken, young man. She was not ignoring your client. She was demonstrating what service actually means, a concept you clearly have yet to grasp." Vincent's jaw dropped. The audacity of this man. "How dare you?" Vincent began. "No," Marcus said, holding up a hand, and Vincent, to his own shock, stopped talking. "I would like to order dinner now, Mrs. Williams." Jasmine was frozen between the two men. I can't," she whispered, looking at Vincent. "I'm sorry." "Oh, you will," Marcus said. His eyes were not on Jasmine, but on Vincent. It was a challenge. "I will have the Osetra caviar, a full tin, and the seared foie gras, and then the 45-day dry-aged ribeye, steak tartare to start, and a bottle of the 1982 Petru." It was an order totaling at this restaurant's prices nearly $7,000. Jasmine stared. Vincent stared. Vincent recovered first. He let out a condescending, ugly laugh. "A game? You're playing a game. You think this is funny? You can't afford the tea you're drinking, old man. You are wasting our time." "Is it the policy of the Golden Crown to refuse an order based on a customer's appearance?" Marcus asked, his voice, still quiet, but now with a sharp legalistic edge. "It is my policy," Vincent shot back, "to protect my establishment from grifters and lunatics. You have 2 minutes to leave before I have you physically thrown out." "I see," Marcus said. He nodded slowly. He looked at Jasmine. "Thank you for the tea, Ms. Williams. It was perfect." Just then, from the next table, the booming voice of Mr. Harrison roared across the room. "Girl, where is my wine? I've been waiting for 10 minutes. Harrison, a large, ruddy-faced man, snapped his fingers aggressively in Jasmine's direction. "You, waitress, stop chatting with the bum and do your job." The entire restaurant, which had been trying to ignore the confrontation, now stopped. Every eye was on Jasmine. She was trapped. On one side, the head waiter who was actively firing her. On the other, an abusive, powerful client, and in the middle, the mysterious, penniless old man who she, for some reason, felt a powerful need to protect. "Mr. Harrison," Jasmine said, turning to him, her voice shaking but firm. "I will be with you in one moment. Please do not snap your fingers. I am not a dog." The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the thick carpet. Mr. Harrison's face went from ruddy to a deep, apoplectic purple. He had never been spoken to like that, certainly not by the help. He stood up, throwing his napkin onto his plate. "That's it," he bellowed, pointing a thick finger at Jasmine. "You're done, Vincent. I spend $500,000 a year in this establishment. If this insolent witch is not fired right here, right now, I will personally see to it that you all are." Vincent went pale. This was it. The ultimate nightmare scenario, a whale client versus a rogue waitress. He didn't hesitate. Vincent rounded on Jasmine. His professional mask was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated rage. He saw his career, his status, his entire life flashing before his eyes, all being threatened by a college student and a vagrant. "You're fired," he shouted, his voice cracking. "You are fired, Jasmine Williams. Get your things. Get out of my restaurant now." Jasmine stumbled back as if physically struck. Tears welled instantly in her eyes, not from anger, but from the sheer crushing injustice of it. Her mother's medical bills, her tuition, her thesis, all of it gone. She had tried to do the right thing to treat a human being with dignity, and this was the price. She looked at Mr. Harrison, who was smiling, triumphant. She looked at Vincent, who was breathing heavily, his face mottled. Then she looked at the old man at table 19. He was just watching, his face calm. He looked disappointed. "I'm sorry, sir," Jasmine whispered to Marcus, the tears now rolling down her cheeks. "I truly am. I wasn't able to complete your service." She turned and began to walk. Her shoulders slumped toward the staff exit. She was defeated. "Stop." The word was not loud. It was not a shout, but it sliced through the restaurant's heavy silence like a diamond blade. It was a voice of absolute, unquestioned, and terrifying command. Jasmine stopped. Vincent, who had been turning to apologize to Harrison, froze. The old man at table 19 was standing up. He was not stooped. He was not frail. He stood to his full height, his posture radiating a power that seemed to suck the air from the room. The shabby coat and knit cap were still on him, but they suddenly looked like a costume, a bizarre aberration. He took the thick smudged glasses off and tossed them onto the table, his eyes clear and sharp as a hawk's swept the room. "Mr. Vincent," Marcus Chen said, his voice now the resonant boardroom baritone that had terrified CEOs for 30 years. "You have just made a catastrophic error in judgment." Vincent was momentarily speechless. The transformation was so complete, so sudden that his brain couldn't process it. I beg your pardon. Who do you think you are?" "He's nobody," Mr. Harrison barked, though a sliver of uncertainty had entered his voice. "He's a crazy old man. Vincent, get this bum out of here. And the girl." Marcus ignored Harrison, keeping his piercing gaze locked on the head waiter. "You just fired the only person in this entire establishment," Marcus said, his voice lethally calm. "Who understands the fundamental meaning of the word service? The only employee who demonstrated an ounce of human decency, wisdom, or honor." "Honor?" Vincent scoffed, regaining a fraction of his bravado. He was confused but still angry. "This is a restaurant, not a karate movie. She disrespected a client. You are trespassing. This is over. Security," he yelled toward the door. "Get in here." Marcus Chen merely smiled. It was a cold, thin smile that did not touch his eyes. "That won't be necessary." He reached into the pocket of his shabby trousers and pulled out a simple, sleek black smartphone. The other patrons who had been watching this like a tennis match gasped. It was the new unreleased model from a tech company Marcus's firm had just acquired. He pressed a single button on his screen. "Mr. Davis, I'm finished. Kindly come to the main dining room of the Golden Crown. Yes, right now." He put the phone away. "What's that?" Vincent sneered. "Calling your imaginary friends?" The great brass doors of the restaurant flew open. Two large men in identical black suits, earpieces, and entered. They were not restaurant security. They were professional. They moved with a silent, coordinated grace flanking the door. A moment later, a third man entered. He was in his late 50s with graying temples and a face that looked like it was carved from granite. He wore a $20,000 bespoke suit. This was Robert Davis, Chief Operating Officer of Dynasty Holdings and Marcus Chen's right-hand man. Davis scanned the room, his eyes finding the old man in the shabby coat. He strode forward without hesitation past the stunned Vincent, past the gawking diners. He stopped a foot in front of Marcus and inclined his head. "Mr. Chen," Davis said, his voice a respectful rumble. "Is everything satisfactory?" The silence in the room was no longer just silence. It was a vacuum. Vincent's face went from red to a sickly mottled white. The blood drained from it entirely. His knees visibly buckled. "Mr. Chen," he whispered. Harrison, the hedge fund manager, looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Marcus Chen, the reclusive, invisible billionaire. He looked from the powerful CEO Davis to the bum in the coat. It was impossible, but it was happening. "Mr. Chen," Vincent stammered, taking a stumbling step forward. I didn't recognize you. I'm so sorry, sir." Marcus Chen held up his hand. The head waiter stopped his apology, dying in his throat. The transformation was complete. The king had returned to his castle. Marcus Chen turned his gaze upon Vincent. It was not a gaze of anger. It was a gaze of cold, clinical assessment, like a scientist examining a failed specimen. "You didn't recognize me," Marcus stated, his voice flat. "That is the one true thing you have said all night. You didn't recognize me when you believed I was a man with no power. You didn't recognize a human being in need of basic dignity. You didn't recognize your own employer." He gestured to the room. "You are the manager of this floor. You are supposed to be the guardian of its reputation. But all you are," Marcus's voice dropped, "is a bully. A gatekeeper who worships wealth and despises weakness. You saw a test and you failed it utterly." "Sir, please," Vincent begged, his hands clasped in front of him, his entire body shaking. "It was a mistake. I was protecting the restaurant, protecting Mr. Harrison." This was the wrong thing to say. Marcus's gaze hardened. He turned to Mr. Harrison, who was trying to sink into his chair. "Mr. Harrison," Marcus said. The man flinched. "You spend $500,000 a year here. You say an impressive sum." "Mr. Chen, Marcus, I had no idea," Harrison stammered, wiping his sweaty face with a napkin. "Look, it was just a misunderstanding. This girl she was, Marcus interrupted, "trying to do her job while being harassed by you." "Now listen," Harrison tried to bluster. "No, you listen." Marcus snapped his voice, finally rising, cracking like a whip. "Your $500,000 is a rounding error to me, but it seems to have bought you the idea that you can treat people like your personal property, that you can snap your fingers and demand obedience. You are a guest in my establishment, and you have abused my staff. You have insulted another guest, and you have polluted the air with your arrogance." Marcus turned to his COO. "Mr. Davis, please make a note. Mr. Harrison's reservation privileges at all Dynasty Holdings properties. Our restaurants, our hotels, our airlines are permanently revoked, effective immediately." Davis nodded already, tapping on his phone. "Yes, sir." Harrison's face crumpled. It was a professional death sentence. "You can't do that." "I just did," Marcus said. "Send the bill for your wine to my office. It will be your last. Now get out." Harrison sputtered. looked at Marcus at Davis at the security guards. Defeated, he grabbed his coat and fled the restaurant in utter humiliation. The room was deathly quiet. Marcus Chen then turned his full attention back to Vincent. "As for you, Mr. Vincent," Marcus said, "your behavior was in a word unforgivable. You are the face of this business, and that face is always cruel, shallow, and incompetent." "Please, Mr. Chen, I have a family. I've worked here for 15 years. "And in 15 years you learned nothing," Marcus said. "You learned how to flatter the rich and step on the poor. That is not service. That is cowardice." Mr. Davis. "Sir, have security escort Vincent off the premises. His termination is effective as of this second. His final severance will be 1 week's pay, no more." "No," Vincent shrieked, lunging forward. "Please, I'll do anything." The 2 security guards intercepted him instantly, grabbing him by the arms. "Mr. Chen, please!" he cried as they dragged him, struggling toward the door. "I'm sorry! I'm sorry!" His cries were cut off as the brass doors swung shut. Marcus Chen stood in the silence, breathing heavily. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the familiar ache in his chest. But there was something else, too, a feeling of rightness. He slowly unbuttoned the threadbare overcoat, letting it fall to the floor. Underneath, he wore the simple, perfectly tailored black shirt and trousers of his daily uniform. He looked at the remaining patrons who were all staring horrified and fascinated. "My apologies for the disruption to your evening," he said. "Your meals tonight, of course, will be complimentary. Please enjoy your food." He then turned. His eyes scanned the room, looking for one person. Jasmine Williams was still standing exactly where he had told her to stop by the service stand. She was pale, her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and wonder. She looked at the billionaire, at the fallen coat, at the empty, disgraced tables of Harrison and Vincent. Marcus Chen walked across the dining room. He stopped in front of her. The entire room watched. He looked at her, his expression softening entirely. The cold CEO was gone. In his place was just Marcus. "Miss Jasmine Williams," he said, his voice now gentle. "Mr. Chen," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You were fired. I believe that was the last thing that happened," he said. "Yes, sir." "Well," Marcus said, "I would like to unfire you." He paused. "In fact, I would like to offer you a promotion." Jasmine Williams stood rooted to the spot, her hand still clasped over her mouth. The entire dining room of the Golden Crown, filled with the wealthiest and most powerful patrons in New York, was staring at her. The silence was absolute, heavier and more profound than the cacophony of moments before. Vincent was gone. Mr. Harrison was gone. All that remained was this man, Marcus Chen, standing before her. No longer a vagrant, not quite a king, but something raw and powerful in between. "A promotion," she finally managed to whisper the words, feeling foreign and ridiculous on her tongue. Her mind was a frantic blur. She was a waitress. She was a student. She was, as of 3 minutes ago, unemployed. "Sir, I don't understand." "Ah, a senior waitress, a shift manager." Marcus Chen's face, so severe and cold moments ago, softened with something that looked almost like pity, or perhaps profound understanding. "No, Miss Williams. Something a little more suited to your unique talents." He let out a long, slow breath, as if the energy of the confrontation had finally left him, leaving only a deep weariness. "I'm not sure you're cut out for this line of work," he said, his voice quiet, but carrying in the stillness. "You have a fatal flaw for the modern service industry. You insist on seeing people as people." He looked around the opulent, gaudy room, his gaze sweeping over the gilded fixtures and the stunned diners. He looked at the table where Mr. Harrison had sat, then at the sticky, unset table where he had been hidden. This place, it was meant to be a temple of excellence. It's become a sty, a reflection of me. He then turned and began to walk, not with a shuffle, but with the long, measured stride of a man who owns the ground he walks on. He didn't look back, but simply said, "Walk with me." Numbly, as if in a dream, Jasmine followed. She felt the eyes of every diner on her back, 100 pinpricks of curiosity and envy. She walked past the head waiter's podium, now conspicuously empty. She walked past the heavy brass doors, which were pulled open by one of the silent-suited men. Mr. Davis, the COO, fell into step, a discreet pace behind them. They emerged onto the cold October street, the city noise horns sirens. The distant rush of traffic hit her like a wave breaking the spell of the restaurant. A black, impossibly sleek sedan glided to the curb as if summoned by thought alone. It was a custom-built Maybach, a car Jasmine had only ever seen in magazines. Mr. Davis stepped forward and opened the rear door. "Miss Williams," Marcus said, gesturing for her to enter first. She hesitated, her hand on the cold handle. "Sir, Mr. Chen, where are we going? My shift? I don't have my coat." "We are going to," Marcus said, "to discuss your future. Don't worry about your coat. You won't be needing it again." She slid into the plush leather interior. It was like sinking into a cloud. The inside of the car was silent, the roar of New York City instantly vanishing as the heavy door closed with a soft pneumatic thump. Marcus sat opposite her, the cabin spacious enough for him to stretch his legs. Mr. Davis took the passenger seat, a glass partition sliding up to seal them in total privacy. The car pulled smoothly into traffic. Jasmine sat on her hands, acutely aware of her cheap apron and the faint smell of restaurant food clinging to her. Marcus Chen watched her, his expression unreadable in the dim glow of the dashboard lights. "Dynasty Holdings has a philanthropic arm." He began, his voice no longer the booming instrument of the CEO, but the reflective tone of a man thinking aloud. "It's a foundation. It manages my personal projects. Among its assets is one of the largest private collections of Japanese art in the Western Hemisphere. It specializes in ukiyo-e woodblock prints, and more to the point, Meiji-era restoration. The very things," he added, his eyes sharp on hers, "you seem to know so much about." Jasmine's heart, which had been pounding, gave a painful jolt. The Dynasty Holdings collection. I've read about it. It's legendary. The Hokusai archive, the lacquer, it's a mess," Marcus said, cutting her off, his voice flat. "It's a warehouse of priceless objects gathering dust. For 20 years it has been managed by academics, pedants, men who can catalog a 16th century tea bowl by its precise dimensions and market value, but who have no concept of the hands that held it or the history it saw." He leaned forward, his passion suddenly evident. "It's just things. An investment, a tax write-off, and it's the only part of my entire empire that was close to my mother's heart." He looked out the window for a long moment at the blur of city lights. She was an artist, Kintsugi. She believed that history, even a history of being broken, was a thing of beauty. These curators, they've been trying to hide the cracks for decades. He turned his piercing gaze back to her. "I am dissolving the current board. I am building a new public wing of the museum. And I need a new director. Not just a curator to file index cards. I need a director to lead it. Someone to oversee the entire collection, to manage its restoration, and to build that new wing from the ground up. I need someone with knowledge, yes. But more than that, I need someone with respect, with empathy, with a good heart. I need," he said, his voice dropping, "someone who understands that a broken thing can be made more beautiful." The implication hung in the silent, leather-scented air. It was so enormous, so impossibly vast, that Jasmine's mind couldn't grasp it. She finally found her voice, and it was shaking. "Mr. Chen, please, you can't be serious. I'm a graduate student. I'm a waitress. I write papers. I serve tea. I have $47 in my bank account. I don't manage multi-million-dollar budgets. I don't hire staff. I don't negotiate with international museums." She shook her head. The absurdity of it threatening to make her laugh or cry. You need a heavyweight, a seasoned professional from the Met or the Louvre. I'll make a fool of myself. I'll destroy your mother's legacy. I'll destroy you. Marcus Chen listened patiently, his hands folded in his lap. When she finished, he was silent for a moment. I have dozens of heavyweights on my payroll, Ms. Williams, he said softly. They are the pedants I just mentioned. They have perfect credentials and zero soul. They know how to do everything, but not a single one of them knows why. You showed me your why tonight. By giving you tea? Jasmine asked, her voice cracking. By honoring me, he corrected. When you had nothing to gain and everything to lose, you stood up to a bully for me. You stood up to another bully for your own dignity. You possess integrity, Ms. Williams. That is a non-negotiable commodity in my world, and it is the rarest. He gestured to the silent Mr. Davis in the front. The how, the budgets, the management, the negotiations that can be taught. Mr. Davis here can teach you that in a month. I will give you every resource. You will report directly to me. But what you have, that fire in you, that deep instinctive respect that cannot be taught. He leaned in again, his eyes electric. You told me you were studying Trans-Pacific Cultural Exchange. You're not just writing a paper on it anymore. You are going to build it. You told me you admired the Kintsugi philosophy. This collection, Jasmine, is my mother's broken pottery. I am handing you the gold. I am asking you to make it whole. Jasmine was speechless. Her mind was racing, trying to find the trap. There was no trap. There was only this impossible, terrifying, beautiful opportunity. She thought of her cramped apartment. She thought of the thesis she was so passionate about, and then the cold, hard reality of her life hit her. I can't, she whispered, the fight draining out of her. Even if I wanted to. My mother, she has MS. The experimental treatments, they cost a fortune. My paycheck from the restaurant, my student loans, it all goes to that. I can't take a risk. Marcus Chen had been anticipating this. He'd had Davis run a full confidential background check the moment she had bowed. Your mother, Andrea Williams, he said, is currently at the Westside Neurological Clinic. Her outstanding bills as of this morning are $82,000. Jasmine flinched, feeling exposed. The Dynasty Holdings Foundation's Medical Research Division, Marcus continued, as if stating a simple fact, will be assuming the full lifetime cost of your mother's treatment. At any facility in the world she chooses, that is a non-negotiable part of your employment contract. Consider it a signing bonus. That was the moment Jasmine broke. The weight of years of scrimping, of saving, of fighting with insurance companies, of watching her mother worry about being a burden. It all came crashing down. She covered her face with her hands and began to sob. Not the quiet, dignified tears of earlier, but the body-racking, gasping sobs of a soul that had finally been unburdened. Marcus sat patiently, saying nothing. He simply slid a box of tissues across the seat. After a long minute, she composed herself, wiping her eyes, her face blotchy and raw. Why? She finally asked, her voice thick. Why are you doing this? For a beau? For a cup of tea? It doesn't make sense. Marcus Chen looked down at his hands. He reached into his trouser pocket and for the second time that night pulled out the small, worn metal disc, the Kirimon. He stared at it lying in the palm of his hand in the dim light of the car. I didn't just go out in those clothes as a test. Jasmine, he said, his voice quiet and heavy with a lifetime of solitude. I went out because that's what I felt like, an old, useless, invisible man, a failure. He told her about his doctor's visit, about the arrhythmia, about the hollow, suffocating emptiness of his $50 billion life. I didn't go out to find an employee, he murmured. I went out to find a single reason to keep living. I went to my own restaurant, my own castle, to see if there was one person left in my world who wasn't a sycophant, a coward, or a shark. And for an hour, I found no one. That restaurant, it was a perfect reflection of the empire I built. Vain, greedy, cruel, and cowardly. He looked at her, his eyes shining with an unfamiliar moisture. I was ready to sign it all away, let it rot. And then you brought me water. You saw me. He closed his hand around the small metal crest. When you saw this, when you bowed, it was like a light being switched on in a tomb. You didn't see a bum. You didn't see a billionaire. You saw my mother's son. You saw the part of me I have kept hidden and shamed for 60 years. You bowed to him. He took a deep, shuddering breath. You didn't just serve me tea, Jasmine. You reminded me of who I am. You honored my past, the only part of me that ever mattered. The least I can do, the very least I can do is give you a future. The car had stopped. Jasmine looked out the window and saw the towering black glass facade of Dynasty Tower, Marcus Chen's global headquarters. Jasmine took a deep breath. She wiped the last tear from her eye. She sat up straight, her back rigid, and turned to face him. Not as a waitress to a billionaire, but as one human being to another. The fear was gone, replaced by a sudden diamond-hard clarity. "Mr. Chen," she said, her voice clear and steady, "I don't know how to run a museum, but I know how to learn, and I know what that crest means, and I know what your mother's art means." She met his gaze, and for the first time she wasn't intimidated. "I will not fail you," she said, "and I will not fail her. I accept." Mr. Davis in the front seat permitted himself a small private smile. Marcus Chen stared at her for a long moment, seeing not the waitress in the apron, but the woman who had faced down Vincent and Harrison, the scholar who had recognized his past, and the director who would now save his future. A small, genuine smile finally touched his own lips. "No, Miss Williams," Marcus Chen said as Davis got out to open her door. "The honor is all mine. Thank you for watching this story of kindness and hidden identity. We live in a world that often judges people by their appearance, by the watch on their wrist or the coat on their back. But as Jasmine showed, true character isn't about what you have. It's about how you treat people who have nothing. One simple act of respect of seeing the person underneath transformed her life and saved a billionaire's soul. What did you think of Marcus's test? Have you ever seen someone judged unfairly? Let us know in the comments below. If this story moved you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful real-life drama every week. Your support means the world to us. We'll see you in the next story.